In the summer of 1940, the world stood at a terrifying crossroads, a moment when freedom itself seemed to be slipping away. As Europe had been shaken and broken by the rapid and merciless advance of Nazi Germany, with one nation after another collapsing under its military power, their armies defeated, their cities occupied, their people silenced. Until Britain stood alone, an island surrounded by sea, yet encircled by danger, facing an enemy that believed itself unstoppable. While across the English Channel, Adolf Hitler looked toward Britain with confidence and certainty, convinced that its defeat was only a matter of time, believing that isolation would become weakness and resistance would soon crumble. And so he prepared his invasion plan, Operation Sea Lion, knowing that before a single German soldier could set foot on British soil, there was one crucial condition that had to be met: complete control of the skies. Because without air superiority, any invasion force would be destroyed before it reached the shore. And so the fate of Britain, and perhaps the fate of the world, was pushed upward into the clouds, where a new kind of war would be fought. A war without trenches, without marching armies, without borders drawn on land. A war decided by aircraft, pilots, and human courage, marking the beginning of the Battle of Britain, the first major battle in history fought entirely in the air, as German bombers began to cross the Channel in massive formations, dark shapes filling the summer sky, escorted by fighters flown by experienced pilots who had already conquered the skies over Europe and believed Britain would fall just as quickly. Yet rising to meet them were the pilots of the Royal Air Force. Not legendary heroes, but ordinary young men placed into extraordinary circumstances. Many barely in their 20s, some still teenagers, coming from Britain and from distant lands, united by a shared understanding that they were outnumbered, exhausted, and facing overwhelming odds. Yet fully aware that if they failed, there would be no retreat and no second line of defense. Because behind them lay their families, their cities, their homes, and the freedom of an entire nation. And so, day after day, the routine repeated with brutal certainty. As sirens wailed across airfields, pilots scrambled toward their aircraft, engines roared to life, and fragile planes lifted into skies filled with fear, smoke, and fire. Where bullets tore through metal, seconds decided survival. And one moment a pilot might be flying beside a friend, and the next that friend would vanish without warning, leaving only empty air behind, with no time to grieve because another mission always followed. While below them, Britain endured a different kind of battle, as night after night bombs rained down during the Blitz, turning cities into burning landscapes of rubble and flame, with London at the heart of the destruction, streets collapsing, homes reduced to dust, and families crowding into shelters and underground stations, listening to explosions echo overhead, children clinging to parents and asking questions no one could answer, wondering if daylight would come again. Yet despite the terror and loss, the spirit of the people did not break. Instead, it hardened. As firefighters ran toward infernos, doctors and nurses worked without rest. Factory workers rebuilt bombed airfields overnight so aircraft could take off again at dawn. Ground crews repaired shattered planes under constant threat of attack. And radar operators watched glowing screens hour after hour, guiding fighters to incoming enemy aircraft, turning technology, coordination, and endurance into powerful weapons. And in the air, RAF pilots continued to fly, despite exhaustion, fear, and mounting losses. Not because they felt fearless, but because surrender was unthinkable. Because every flight carried the weight of millions of lives. And slowly, the impossible began to happen. As German losses increased, confidence faltered, and the skies over Britain remained unconquered. Until, by September 1940, the truth could no longer be denied. The Luftwaffe had failed to destroy the Royal Air Force. The invasion was postponed and then quietly abandoned, marking the first major defeat of Nazi Germany and proving to the world that tyranny was not unstoppable, that courage could overcome fear, and that even in its darkest hour, Britain did not fall, but stood firm, defended by a few who carried the fate of many on fragile wings, showing that history is not always decided by numbers or power, but by human will, sacrifice, and the refusal to surrender.